Our tale begins in 911 when the Frankish king, Charles the Simple, allows a group of Vikings to settle in Normandy, France. This new Viking settlement was ruled by the mighty Rollo, a Norse man famous for his cunning and cruelty. Soon the land of Normandy would flourish under the rule of the Viking lords, and their power and influence would reach far and wide. The once brash pagans would soon adapt to the native Gallo-Roman culture, converting to Christianity and speaking Old Norman. Over the decades, Norman power would extend across the sea to the land of the Saxons. Through marriage, Normans would bind their fate to that of the Saxon crown. January 1066, the childless Saxon king Edward the Confessor is dead, sparking a struggle for the crown of England. Three powerful men would draw their swords to claim the kingdom. The most powerful man in England, Harald Godwinson, would strike first. The Witan elected the Saxon lord, King of the English, and he was crowned on the 6th of January 1066 at Westminster Abbey. Little did they know that Godwinson would be the last Anglo-Saxon king. From the frozen fjords emerged the mighty Viking king of Norway. The feared Harald Hardrada would begin assembling a fleet of ships to wrench the English crown from Godwinson. Across the Channel in Normandy, Duke William would draw support from across the French kingdom as he assembled his invasion fleet. All three men knew that there could be only one true king, and that the rivers would run red before the year was out. 1066 would see the death of two kings and a new ruler of the Saxons who would change the course of history forever. Harald would gather his forces in the south, waiting for William's invasion fleet to arrive. But the cunning William knew to bide his time. Soon the harvest season was upon them, and Harald had no choice but to disband his forces who were needed on the farms. But it would be from the north that the invading armies would come. Hardrada would make short work of the Saxon forces led by Edwin, Earl of Mercia, capturing the city of York. King Harald, still in southern England, was taken by surprise at the news. He would waste no time riding day and night to do battle with a Viking warlord. Men from around the kingdom would rally to their Saxon king. With such haste and fury did Godwinson ride that his army arrived in the bitter north in only 4 days, catching the Viking horde by surprise. As the two forces prepared to face each other, a lone figure emerged from the Saxon ranks. A messenger from the king of the Saxons. He made an offer to Tostig Godwinson, the king's exiled brother. If Tostig would turn his back on the Norwegian, Harald would be willing to return his earldom. Tostig demanded to know what offer the king would make to Hardrada. The messenger coldly replied, 7 feet of English ground, as he is taller than other men. As the messenger turned his horse and rode back toward the Saxon army, a smile crossed the battle-hardened Norwegian's face. Impressed by the boldness of the messenger, he turned to Tostig and asked, "Who was that man?" Tostig's reply, "He is my brother, Harald Godwinson, the King of England." Before battle could commence, the Saxon forces needed to cross the bridge. One Viking warrior stood in the middle of the bridge, daring any Englishman to take him on. 40 men would die by his Dane axe before a sneaky Saxon swam under the bridge, thrusting a spear between the planks and mortally injuring the Norseman. The delay had saved Hardrada's army from a rout and allowed his men time to form a shield wall as the waves of Saxons descended upon them. The men would draw their swords and thrust their spears as the battle commenced. Shield against shield, metal against flesh. The battle would rage for hours as the bodies littered the battlefield. As the Vikings had been caught by surprise, many men did not have their armor on, and as the hours wore on, holes began to form in the Viking shield wall. Soon, the Saxons were able to flank Hardrada's men, tipping the battle in favor of Godwinson. The once feared Viking warlord, who once sailed the Mediterranean at the head of the Varangian Guard, now lies dead, an arrow penetrating his windpipe. The Norsemen broke and fled. The Saxons gave no quarter and slew those too slow to escape their blades. So many men perished that day that 50 years later, the field was still white with the bleached bones of the fallen. Of the 300 ships that Hardrada had set sail with from Norway, only 24 returned home. With Harold's victory at Stamford Bridge, the only man that stood between him and the Kingdom of England was William, Duke of Normandy.